Deacon Darius, a sacrist at the Abbey of the Final Star, discovered that an important holy relic was missing from the monastery's Chamber of Sacred Relics. As the sacrist, it was his duty to secure all relics, and thus it was his duty to find and retrieve the missing item. He set out to solve this mystery. Down the mountain path, he comes to the small fishing town of Bertrand's Folly. The small fishing village of Bertrand's Folly has been plagued by an invasion of the undead. The villagers will not be able to withstand the onslaught of another attack. Some of the villagers have noticed a bright, sickly blue light emanating from a small island just off the coast of Bertrand's Folly. A light that they say signals the arrival of the undead. Some call it a necromantic energy. The village council has collected 100 silver pieces and the promise of a lifetime of quaint seafood dining to any hero who can investigate the island and put an end to whatever evil force has taken root there. With a boat on loan, oars in hand, Deacon Darius sets out to explore the island in hopes of saving the village and enjoying the locally caught fish in his belly. He had to find an ancient cemetery and the tomb that opened up into the undead lord's lair. Upon reaching the easternmost shore of the undead island, Darius is discovered by a lone skeletal scout. Already the undead are patrolling. Darius defeated the scout, but at the moment of the final blow, the scout unleashed a psychic alarm, triggering the undead lord's awareness. Darius was wounded from his fight with the skeletal scout and took refuge in a small cave to the northwest. Within the cave, Darius discovered a partially secret section which he could hide in to be protected from any would-be attackers. The next morning, Darius continued his search for the undead lord and headed west. He stumbled upon an altar of horrors. After careful study, Darius recognized the runes as being linked to evil necromantic powers. He realized that he would have to find a magical enchantment within the tomb to enchant his weapon before he could stop the undead lord. The undead lord used his power of the altar to gaze into Darius's mind. Darius bashed the altar with his warhammer, but he could not destroy it. At the moment of impact, 2 skeletons erupted from the earth. Darius wasted no time in dispatching the skeletal attackers, and with one critical blow, he rendered them into fragments of bone and dust. Darius continued west and made it to the westernmost shore, where he found a lone skeleton partially buried in the sand. Darius was able to locate the skeleton's tracks and followed them back to the cemetery, where he found the tomb that opened up to a dungeon below. At the bottom of the stairs leading from the tomb into the ground, there were 3 exits, one to the north, east, and west. Darius chose the eastern exit first. It opened to a long, dark corridor. From within the corridor, he heard the ancient evil whispers of a ghostly presence. Surprisingly, he found that his spectral voices only bolstered his resolve to slay the evil within. He moved into the next chamber, only to find the only true exit was blocked by a pile of immovable rubble. There were 2 doors in this passage, both unlocked. Opening the first door led into a small room with a small makeshift altar against the far wall. Piled on the altar were many dozens of old rags and cloth, soiled with fresh blood and bits of body. Darius recognized that this was a common ritual of the southern necromancers who needed fresh kills to charge their necromantic powers. In the next room was a zombie. Darius dispatched the zombie with no issues, and the zombie stayed dead. There was a locked chest against the wall. Darius was unable to open the lock, and he realized that bashing the wooden box would have made too much noise, so he decided to leave it and he headed back to try the westernmost exit from the entrance chamber. The western door led to a long corridor, cool and dry. In a hidden alcove, Darius discovered a small pile of 19 silver. He pocketed the coin and headed south, leaving the northernmost exit for later. The southern exit opened to a room with a narrow walkway surrounded by a bottomless pit. The walkway was broken at the far end, but Darius saw an ornate treasure chest past the gap being guarded by a giant skeleton warrior. Darius used his rope and grappling hook to swing across the gap, bashed in the giant skelly's skull with his warhammer, and opened the chest to reveal the divine blessing needed to enchant his weapon and kill the undead lord. He headed back to the cool, dry corridor, and this time he headed north. And there it was, the necromantic chamber. The undead lord was waiting for Darius. It summoned 2 skeleton warriors to aid him in battle. But because of the divine blessing bestowed upon his warhammer, Darius was able to slay the skeletons and defeat the undead lord with only taking minor wounds himself. Upon exiting the dungeon, Darius's warhammer crumbled into dust. Back at Bertrand's Folly, Darius enjoyed a hero's welcome. He decided to stay for a few days and maybe ask around for any clues about his abbey's missing relic. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that little adventure recap, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the systems and tools that I used to create that adventure. And I had a lot of fun on that little adventure, and it was pretty easy to execute. So the first thing we're going to be taking a look at is Advanced Dungeon Goons, and this is an analog fantasy adventure game. And this is actually the dungeon set. This all comes in a package. You also get some dice. And this says that Advanced Dungeon Goons is a rules-light classic fantasy tabletop adventure game for 2 or more players based on the game Tunnel Goons created by Nate Treme. And this is available at gelatinouscubism.com. That is a great name. I love that. But Advanced Dungeon Goons is a very simple little system, and for the most part, I think it's pretty good. There are a couple weird little things, mostly dealing with combat, but nothing that can break the system, and it's easily house ruled or easy to get around, basically. Maybe if the designers take a look at this video, they can let me know. But this was written and illustrated by Jacob Fleming and edited by Amanda Fleming. And I gotta say, the illustrations are very, very good. I love the look of this. I love how small it is. It's very easy to get into and set up and play. So that is a really cool thing. Now, it is not made for solo from the ground up. So you will have to layer on a couple tools in order to get this to play solo. The main tool that I used for my Oracle was the Perplexing Ruins Oracle system here, which I have talked about before, and I think this is a really cool Oracle chart. It's very easy to use. And then on the back side, you also get this kind of icon system or MacGuffin system or a word system that you can roll up for random things. And I think this is available from the Perplexing Ruins website for about $5. And it also comes with the PDF copy or the paper copy of Fallen, his RPG. And then I also, of course, used a little bit of Fable Tables 2 and a couple decks of cards. So we'll go ahead and talk about all of those things in more detail. But Advanced Dungeon Goons, so this is the character that I made. You heard his name, Deacon Darius. And he is now level 1, or he is level 1 with 3 XP. This is at the end of this adventure. I do need to add his gold in from his reward for killing the necromancer for the village, or for the fishing town of Bertrand's Folly. But he has a stat of 1 brute and 1 sage. He has 11 HP. His warhammer was destroyed at the end of that last adventure, so I'm going to have to purchase a new warhammer. I also used my rope and grappling hook to get across a gap in that adventure, so I'm going to have to repurchase some things. But overall, this is the state of the character. So Dungeon Goons, you open it up here, and on the first page, you basically have a really quick get down and dirty, get into the rules page. And this just kind of tells you about the structure of the game, what you're going to be doing for all of your action rolls. You're basically going to be rolling 2d6, and you will have difficulty scores attached to those rolls. So on an easy is a 6, or very easy is a 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And you have to meet or beat that score with a roll of 2d6 while also adding any of your relevant bonuses. And that is how you overcome challenges. That's how you make your stat checks. If the actions are particularly dangerous, then and you fail, then the difference between the difficulty score and what you rolled, or the total, that's how much damage you take. So that's a really easy way to figure out damage from a trap. You know, if a trap has a difficulty score of 12 and you roll, and let's say you only roll an 8, and it's a let's say it was a trap that needed some strength to overcome, so that would be a 9. So 12 minus 9 would be 3, so you would take 3 points of damage from that trap. Very easy. I like that system. And the same goes for all of your saving throws. Now, character creation in this game is very simple. You're going to have your health points, and those are going to start with 10 plus your brute stat. And your stats are both attributes and classes. So whatever attribute you put more points into, that kind of dictates your class, and I do like that. So you have 3 stats, and that's brute, dexterity, and sage. If you put points into brute, you're going to be good at fighting, feats of strength, hardiness. You're going to be a fighter, a warrior, barbarian, that kind of thing. If you put points into dexterity, you will be sneaking. You will be good at sneaking, at aiming, balancing, you know, things that a thief or a rogue might be good at. And then if you put some points into sage, you will be better at studying or perception, speaking, and possibly wielding magic. And so you would be kind of like, you know, a seer or a mage or a prophet or something like that. And a beginning character has 2 points to distribute. So I put 1 point in brute and 1 point in sage because he does work at a monastery. You know, he is in charge of protecting the monastery's holy relics. I figured he needed to have some strength. He needed to be some kind of fighter in order to, if he needed to wield his strength to protect the relics, he could. But he also needed a point in sage so he could understand the relics and he could understand some of the powers bestowed upon them. Okay, then you're going to name your character and you're going to purchase some starting equipment. You begin with a certain number of silver pieces, and then it goes through some of the equipment. You can buy some examples. Now, one thing we will talk a little bit later on is the shield here. The shield, it doesn't tell you what bonuses you get by wielding the shield, and that is where some of the weirdness in the combat comes in. And it also talks about your inventory. You will have an inventory score of, I believe your inventory score starts at 8, and that's how many items you can carry. And if you are ever carrying more than that, then you take a penalty to your stat checks. And then we get into the magic section here. Again, man, this art is so cool. I love it. But the magic is interesting. If you have a sage score of 2 or more, then you can possibly wield magic. Now, this game, because it's so short, it doesn't come with a whole list of spells and ingredients you need to mix for potions and all of that. It's basically you describe what you want to do. If you think you need a roll, you will assign a difficulty score to that spell, and then you will roll just like you would on any other kind of stat check or test. If you succeed, then the spell that you describe goes off. You can also burn some points of HP to add to that roll. So it's a very open-ended kind of magic system. I like that, but it does require a little bit more on your part as the player to come up with the magic that your character wants to use. We also have a brief section on magic items and potions, and then we get into the combat section. And this is where the things get a little bit tricky. I think they could have done a better job of explaining how the different attacking, defending, and dodging actions work. Attacking is pretty easy. You will roll 2d6. If you are using a strength weapon, you will add your brute. If you're using a ranged weapon, you will add your dexterity. Maybe if you're using a magic weapon, you will add your sage. And then each of the weapons will give you a certain bonus. So you add up all of your bonuses, and each of the monsters will have a difficulty score. And that difficulty score determines the number that you have to meet or beat to hit that monster. The difference between the two is the damage. Now, attackers and defenders, they can both take damage. When you are engaged in combat, you are both attacking and defending. So damage can happen on either side. The one really cool thing I do like about this system is that as the monsters take damage, Their difficulty score is also their hit points. And so as they take damage, they become easier to hit and easier to dodge or easier to defend against. That is a super cool system. I love that. It goes into a little bit of initiative and surprise, and then it goes into defending. So when an enemy attacks you, you still roll the dice. The enemies don't roll, but you roll a defense roll, and at that point, you get to add any points for any armor that you are wearing. So armor helps you on defense rolls. But again, you can also damage the enemy on your defense roll. What gets weird though here is the dodging. I'm not quite sure how this works. This says that as a reaction to being attacked, a defender may elect to dodge by subtracting 2 from the attacker's roll. But if I'm the player and I'm dodging, the monster is not attacking me. I'm rolling the dice. And so I'm not quite sure where the -2 comes from. This is a little, I don't know if this is poorly worded or I'm just not grasping what it's trying to say. I'm not sure. But it does go into the rules about being engaged. When you are engaged, you can take an action to disengage. You can subdue enemies. It goes into ranged attacks. And then also, if you're fighting multiple enemies, I also like this. You have to subtract a -1 from your roll for every additional enemy over 1 that you are engaged with. I think that's a really cool rule as well. And then we get into a little bit of monsters and NPCs. Now, bosses are a little different than normal minions. If an enemy is a boss, you can put a star by it, and then that means that they are more powerful. So as they take damage, their difficulty score does not go down. So that's how you can kind of make the bosses feel a little more powerful and a little more dangerous. And you can also assign abilities to your monsters. So I made a little random monster chart for my adventure here where I had skeletons, zombies, and giant skeletons. And I said that skeletons were immune to range because like missile weapons, bolts and arrows would just pass through the bones, so they couldn't be hit by range weapons. Zombies, I said, had a 1 in 6 chance to come back to life. And a skeletal giant was weak against blunt weapons like my warhammer. I also made up a rule here for double 1s was a critical miss where something bad would happen, and double 6s was a critical hit to where any damage that was left over from killing the monster you were attacking would carry over to any other monsters you were engaged with. And that did save me once, or did allow me to kill 2 skeletons in one blow. That was a lot of fun. You get into a little bit of wandering monsters, a 1 in 6 chance of having a random encounter, some NPC reactions, an easy reaction table, and a morale system to find out if the monsters will escape, will try to run away from you. And then you also get some very brief rules on adventuring, how to take time and turns, movement and distance. Everything is very easy, like most of this game, except for the weird combat issues. Everything is very simple and well explained, and it kind of covers everything you need to have a complete role-playing experience in one little book. You get a little dungeon crawl at the end here, and then this adventure pack also comes with an adventure called the Shrine of the Scorpion Lords, and this adventure takes place around the Fort Drywater. And first you're going to have a little hex crawl around that area, and then when you find the Shrine of the Scorpion Lords, you will go into a larger dungeon crawl here. This does add another kind of 5 different enemies that you can fight, so this is kind of cool as well. Now, I did purchase an extra copy of just the book to give away to a Dungeon Dive patron, and I'm going to be posting that in a couple of days or so. You also get 4 character sheets. I just kind of scanned mine and then used a half page there to have a little more room for notes. Now on this adventure, I used a couple decks of cards to kind of flesh out the adventure, and those were the Fantasy Trip Outdoor Encounter cards and Axebane's Deck of Many Dungeons. For these encounter cards, I went through and I pulled some out that I thought would be cool to encounter on an adventure on a small island that was inhabited by a necromancer. And so on my adventure, I said I was looking for this fenced cemetery. So this was kind of like what I was looking for within that tomb there. That was the tomb that led down into the dungeon below. And then I took the rest of these cards and I was going to construct an island out of these cards. And so what I did is I just mixed these up. And then rather than just flipping these over and having a random encounter one at a time, I thought it would be kind of cool to kind of build an island out of, give me some spatial, give me a little bit of just a feeling of moving around an island. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I decided that this island would be kind of shaped like this. Down the middle of the island would be this ravine where I couldn't move across from the north to the south in the center of the island. And so I did kind of have to circumnavigate. I had to explore around the island. So that way there would be a possibility of some backtracking needed, you know, where I could maybe have to move back or something and have more random encounters. Rather than mix the card that I was looking for into the island in order to prevent me from just finding the cemetery on my first turn, I said that each time I encountered a card, I would add 1 to the roll of a d4. And if I ever rolled a 6, then that means that I had found the location that I was looking for. And so as I would move, I would just take a little marker, where'd my little meeple go? And I would move on to a location. And I might find a shaky bridge where maybe I'd have to pass a dexterity check to get across. And then I can move and maybe find a dark grave. And then I would, of course, set up a scene with each one of these and role play a little bit. I did find the cave where I was able to go in and rest to heal some hit points, to heal some damage. There is the altar of horror that I found, and I was able to translate some of the runes on that. I did not discover the Wicked Hag. I thought she might be kind of a cool NPC to interact with. The Forgotten Tomb was not part of my adventure. The Restless Dead, man, I love the art on these cards. It's done by Luigi Castellano, I believe his name is. He actually did some of the art, Castellani. He actually did art for Scarlet Heroes, and I love his art. I need to try to contact him to do a Dungeon Dive t-shirt, because how cool would that be on a t-shirt? Oh my god. But yeah, so that was really fun. I love this deck of cards. It's one of my favorite tools for solo role-playing. It is just always so much fun. Now, the rules are specifically written for Fantasy Trip, so you do have to do some conversions, and I don't know the rules for Fantasy Trip at all. Then once I found the dungeon, once I found the tomb, I used the Deck of Many Dungeons. And this is a fantastic tool for creating random dungeons. But I did it a little bit differently. So what you could do is you could just start, you know, laying out your aces are always your entrances. So you could just start laying out random cards and having kind of a random dungeon where you're just kind of exploring endlessly to find what you can find. But I wanted to have a little bit more of a purpose to my design. And so I kind of use these cards in a way that you would use the dungeon cards in Warhammer Quest. So there would be some meaningful exploration. And so what I did is I picked an entrance. So I had my entrance here of where I was going down into the dungeon from the tomb above. And then I decided to say that the 10 of clubs, this was my treasure room. This was where the divine blessing was. That's the gap that I had to jump over. And so this was going to be one of the things I needed to find before facing the necromancer, before facing the undead lord. And then I said that the king of clubs here, this was the necromantic chamber. So this was like the goal. This was the objective room that I would face off against the necromancer in. And so I took those, and then I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more random cards to have a total of 9. And then I shuffled those up to make my dungeon. And then I dealt those evenly to the exits. And then I would have to explore. And so this kind of set in stone the directions that I would need to explore in order to find the chamber where I had that magic spell to enchant my Warhammer, and then eventually find the necromantic chamber. So these would be placed like this. Oh no, so that's a dead end already. Okay, so a dead end. So these two I would add as evenly as I could to the bottom of the other stacks. And then I would continue on. Okay, well, so that's a stairway up. I would just say that that is another exit to a kind of like maybe a small upper level. So we could do that. That upper level maybe is another dead end. So you could add those there like that and then continue on. So very cool, very easy way to generate a dungeon. There is my necromantic chamber. If there are ever dead ends and your dungeon gets completely closed off, well, you can just search around for a secret passage. You know, you could say every room has at least, or every room has the chance of a secret passage. And if you don't find a secret passage and you're at your final room, then you have found a secret passage or something like that. And the Decks of Many Dungeons also comes with some rule cards, so you get some rules on how to use it in a certain way. You get a card that has your NPCs and quest items, so random quest items and random NPC names. You also get a card here that has some treasure, some random treasure rolls, and another set of random NPC and quest items. And then you also get a card here for random traps and random quest generators. So you could have an entire dungeon crawl using just this deck of cards and a simple RPG system. I love that. I also have started a campaign notebook for this character for Deacon Darius and his quest to retrieve his holy relic. So this is the Perplexing Ruins campaign notebook. I just printed it out and put it in this binder here. So I have kind of mapped out this initial area. I need to fill in the Abbey. The Abbey's going to be kind of over here, up here in a mountain region. And then there's this road that travels down into Bertrand's Folly. And Bertrand's Folly is a fishing town. And off the coast here, there's the Undead Island there. And Bertrand's Folly, I used a town generator called, what was it called? I found it on Google, Bones of the Tarrasque. I'll put a link to this, but it's kind of like a one-roll town generator. And so this is at the town square. Bertrand's Folly is a bonfire. Lodging, they have open-air campgrounds. I figure they don't want people staying in their town too long. The campground is very nice, but they don't have a nice inn. Food, plentiful fish, of course. Shops, they have a carpenter who specializes in making boats and a general store. The economy, of course, is a fishery. They have a guild hall of fishermen. Their defense is a local militia or the citizenry. They have a coastal trade route where they trade fish with other towns. Crime is harshly punished. Beliefs, they were awaiting a chaotic god. And I'm going to try to roleplay that and determine if this chaotic god maybe is coming from this island. Maybe they did something. I was thinking that maybe at one point in history, this ocean, this water level was lower and there was a land bridge connecting these places. And maybe their ancestors are actually buried on this island. And when the island got cut off, they got cut off from this kind of maybe this magical connection between them and their ancestry. And so now some kind of chaotic god is using that disconnection of their ancestral magic in order to gain power, something like that. I'm not quite sure yet. And then their governance, they are governed by a council of the most successful fishermen. So that's going to that's how they decide things politically. And then again, I did use the Perplexing Ruins Oracle whenever I needed it to set a scene and kind of determine what was going on. And then I also used Table Fables 2 just a little bit to determine some of the dungeon elements, because Table Fables 2 has a really, really good section, a very brief but very powerful and well-written section on populating dungeons with interesting things. Anytime I came across a door, I used this to see if the door was locked and that kind of stuff. So overall, I had a lot of fun on this little adventure. I am looking forward to having further adventures with Deacon Darius and seeing if he can retrieve his holy relic and where that quest takes him. So all right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.